welcome to episode 19 of the Stray Dog Footy podcast. I am Frodo, your Florida footy fan. I hope you are all staying safe, staying sane, and reaching out if you need help. These are strange days indeed, and somehow the strangeness has taken on a bit of familiarity, and I hope this doesn't cause you, or me, to lower our guard. Remember, look out for yourself, and look out for others, because we're all in this together. Also, keep spreading the word about the AFL. Inform your buddies about the broadcast times and help explain the rules to the new fans. Of course, I know that these days we're not supposed to gather, but like almost everything, from shopping to doctor's visits, so much can be done online. But also these crazy days, with American sport slow to resume and people still held captive in their homes, we still have that window of opportunity to spread the gospel. And of course, if you or your American buddies, both men and women, are of the younger and or more athletically inclined sort, don't forget that the United States Australian Football League, or USAFL, has teams in or near almost every major city across the United States. Maybe you can go out there and have yourself a kick when this COVID thing is put to rest, and meet some awesome new friends while you're at it. Also, if you find yourself short on footy gear, the fine folks at www.playaussie.com can certainly help you out. Okay, now on to the pro footy. Phew, the Footy Frenzy is over, at least for now. Have to say, it is kind of strange not having footy every day of the week right now. I kind of feel like one of those guys following Forrest Gump when he suddenly quits running across the country and goes home. Now what are we supposed to do? Well, I guess the only thing to do is talk about the most recent round of footy until the next matches come our way. So, on to the last round of the Footy Frenzy, also known as Round 12. First up on Thursday, we had the Battle of the Bridge being played completely the long way across the continent from Sydney at Optus Stadium in Perth, West Australia. You gotta love the COVID hub craziness this season, right? Well, especially if you support the Swans, as they absolutely bloodied, yes, pun intended, bloodied the Giants by a score of 66-25. Once again, the criticism of Coach Liam Cameron was heard all over the footy world, but I'm not sure it's totally justified, honestly. To echo how GWS star Heath Shaw put it, when they lose, the coach gets the blame. But when they win, the media credits the players' talents. Well, the Giants were without the talents of Toby Green for this game, so what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I suppose. And let's not forget, there was another team there as well, who did their job quite well to boot. But somehow, that gets lost in the conversation sometimes. Congratulations on a job well done, Sydney. Next, on Friday, we had the Cats and the Power. I thought this would be such a great contest, and instead, it was just such a lopsided affair that it felt more like Geelong was an actual cat playing with its food before killing it. When the final siren mercifully sounded, ending Port's agony, the Cats had won by a score of 91-31. The Cats are definitely a top contender this season, for sure. But I still won't rule out Port yet either. Next, to start the Saturday action, we had North Melbourne and Brisbane. Brizzy continues to be inaccurate in front of the sticks, and they probably should have won by way more than a single point at 53-52. Unfortunately for North, it was yet another loss, closer than most, but still, no points in the ledger. Then we saw the Demons and the Magpies. Another shocker, at least for me. Melbourne is on a roll right now, crushing Collingwood by a score of 100-44. Both of these clubs are on the opposite ends of the spectrum for where they started this season right now, despite both clubs hanging on to the bottom two slots of the top 8. Next, we had Freo and Carlton. Much like they lost to Port earlier this year, the Blues won by a kick from the deep right pocket after the siren. Had a bit of controversy to it too, but points are points, the Blue Baggers beating the Dockers by a score of 40-36. Then we saw the mighty Bulldogs and the winless Crows. Coming off of 3 losses in a row, in 12 days to arguably 3 of the strongest clubs in the league, the Doggies were desperate to even up the ledger with a win. And though for the first few minutes it looked to be a close contest, the Sons of the West soon asserted their dominance over the hapless Crows, handing Adelaide their 12th loss of the season by a score of 111-54. I have to say, it was so great to have our tall forward back. Aaron, the astronaut Naughton, kicking a bag of 6 goals. Also, the Bulldogs' ball movement was on another level, with the Bont and the Bailey show on full display. Unfortunately, it wasn't all sunshine on the Gold Coast, as the Dogs' emerging star of a ruckman, Tim English, came off the field with a very late ankle injury. It is still unsure if he'll be ready for the next round. Touch wood, as they say down under. Next, we had St. Kilda and Essendon. The Saints marched into victory, 68-33. So what is actually going on at the hangar these days? There doesn't seem to be a clear answer as to what is wrong. They are in the 11th spot on the ladder with a rather poor percentage, and their ledger is 5 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw, with a game in hand with Melbourne to be made up. What do you guys think? Is it a case of too many chefs in the kitchen with the dual coaching / transition going on? Or is it the injuries? Let me know. I'd love to hear your theories. Then we had the Eagles and the Hawks meeting up. No real surprises here. The West Coast won by a score of 81-49. Unfortunately, it looks like Hawthorn's James "Sissa" Sicily did his ACL and will be out for at least the rest of the season. And maybe part of next year, too. Speedy recovery, buddy. Finally, on Monday, we had Richmond and the Gold Coast. The upstart Suns gave the gold badge-wearing Tigers a larger scare than the 53-32 final score would suggest, leading at halftime. There seems to be little love lost between Tom Lynch and his former club on the Gold Coast, and there was a bit of controversy involving him and his aggression out on the field, for which Lynch copped a few fines. With the lull between rounds after the Footy Frenzy was over, there were some comments made in the media, to which Dimma, the Richmond head coach, took exception to and lashed out in a manner somewhat stronger than what one hears at most press conferences. But whether one likes his comments or not, right or wrong, I have to kind of admire a coach that has his players back, even if a relatively recent transplant such as Lynch. Oh, and for all the new footy fans out there, in case you hadn't noticed, the reigning premiers, the team that won last year's grand final, the AFL's version of the Super Bowl, gets to wear a gold-colored AFL logo on their Guernseys instead of the traditional red worn by all the other teams that season. Next time you see the Richmond Tigers play, check it out. Speaking of playing next, let's move on to round 13, also known as the Indigenous round, or more correctly, the Sir Douglas Nicholls round. If you are not familiar with Sir Douglas Ralph Nicholls, just know that he was an extraordinary person whose life I could never do justice squeezed in between rounds in this episode. Perhaps one day when there's less footy going on, I will do a much more thorough job at attempting to honor his legacy. For now, suffice it to say that, in Australia, Mr. Nicholls could be considered a cross between both Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Jackie Robinson. He rose from an illiterate teenager to become a sensational Aussie rules footballer, civil rights activist, and was even elected governor of the state of South Australia. I will leave a link in the show notes to a fascinating documentary about Sir Douglas Nicholls made by the AFL on YouTube. I highly suggest you check it out. So, in honor of Reconciliation Week, every season since 2005, the AFL dedicates one round to celebrate the Indigenous Aboriginal peoples of Australia, who are also known as the First Australians. And since 2016, the Indigenous Round of Footy has been named after Sir Douglas Nicholls. Most clubs create unique Guernseys to honor the event, incorporating Indigenous artwork into their usual colors to be used for this round only. There are also many celebrations, rituals, and observances that take place during this special round of football. Of course, everything is different this year with COVID. But one pretty cool change born out of the virus precautions is that 2 of the matches will actually be played in the Northern Territory, home to many Indigenous people, including both past and present Indigenous AFL players. Starting on Friday, we have the Suns and the Blues playing up in Darwin in the NT. Hard match to tip, honestly. The Blues won their last, barely, and the Suns are certainly due a win soon. Here in the States, you can see this game on ESPN3, if you can find it. Then, on Super Saturday in Australia, but starting at 11:30 p.m. on Friday night here in the States, Eastern Time Zone, we have my mighty Bulldogs taking on the Surging Demons. Both teams have some ruck injury concerns, and it is not known just yet who will be lining up to take the opening bounce. But just how important rucks are is debatable when you have a dominant midfield. Well, here again, we have some interesting matchups, perhaps most notably Bontempelli and Petrarca. Cannot wait to see how this turns out, and here in America, you can see this on Fox Sports 2. Next on Saturday, we have Port Adelaide and Hawthorn. Port just received suspensions for 2 players, Latham and Houston, as well as some fines for COVID breaches, and both are regular contributors to the Power's success this season. Will their loss be enough of a blow for the Hawks to win? I don't know, but you can find out on Fox Sports 1 here in the USA. Also on Saturday, we have the Bombers and Tigers, the other match played up in Darwin. The Dons are looking at a tough time trying to right the ship against a Richmond team that seems to have found its premiership rhythm. You can see this Clash of the Sash on Fox Sports 1 here in America. Next, still on Saturday, we'll see Freo take on Sydney. Unfortunately, I don't believe this match will be shown on American TV. And as always, I think your best bet is to head on over to www.watchafl.com and sign up for a few months. Then next year, get an international membership from your favorite team to save on the subscription costs. Plus, being an actual member of your club is so very cool. Makes simply cheering for a team seem kind of lame in comparison to literally taking ownership of your club. At least, that is how I feel about it. Moving on. Then, on Sunday, though once again a late start on the previous day here in the States, we begin with Adelaide and Geelong. I see little hope for the unfortunate Crows to break their losing streak against the uber-powerful Cats. Also, unfortunately, this one is another matchup not shown on American TV. So, off to the Watch AFL app we go. Next, we have the Lions and the Saints. Brizzy has been so inaccurate against goal this season that should they actually trade their behind totals for goals, I don't think there's a single team who could stand in their way. But that is easier said than done, to be sure. And the days of the Saints being pushovers for easy wins are gone. You can see this matchup on Fox Sports 1 here in the US of A. Then we have West Coast versus GWS. Now, as a Bulldogs diehard fan and member, everyone can pretty much guess that I don't send Toby Green many love letters. But I am having a very hard time thinking of a single player who has such an impact on his team as he does. Without him, the Giants seem to be kind of mediocre at best. But with him, they are a definite force to be reckoned with. And he is slated to rejoin his side this week against the already high-flying and dominant Eagles. I can't wait to see how this turns out. You can see it too on Fox Sports 2, stateside. Finally, last game of the round with another edition of Monday Night Football in Australia, featuring Collingwood and North Melbourne. Collingwood of late is not the same side that began this year on a tear, but then the same could be said for North. I think the Pies will likely bounce back better than the Roos from last round, but let's not forget that North just barely lost their last game. It remains to be seen if I'm correct, and it can be seen on ESPN2 here in the States. Well, I think that should just about do it for this episode. As always, I thank you so much for listening. I would be so grateful if you'd be kind enough to share a link to this podcast with your family and friends. And maybe, if you could, consider giving me a like and a rating wherever you listen to your podcasts. This particular podcast can be found on your favorite podcast player or at straydogfooty.podbean.com. And I would love to hear your feedback. Please let me know what you like or dislike about this pod. Like all podcasters, I of course want to put out the best pod possible. And your feedback is the best tool to let me know how I'm doing. As always, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Stray Dog Footy, and by email at straydogfooty@yahoo.com. As always, I should mention that I am not endorsed by or officially affiliated with either the Australian Football League or the Western Bulldogs Football Club, beyond being a huge fan and supporter. Likewise, I am not endorsed or affiliated with Peg and the Rejected, but I am a fan of their music. I would like to thank them for the use of their song, Red, White, Black, and Blue, which I used a portion of as the intro to this episode. I will also play us out to their entire song, and of course, leave a link in the show notes to their music. Take care, my friends. Be safe. Enjoy this weekend's footy. And I'll see you next time here at this wayward doghouse. Cheers.